Can you imagine a life where work is optional? Keep listening to find out how you can become financially independent. Hello, and welcome to the Wealth Minded MD podcast with your money best friends. I'm Dr. Lisha Taylor.
And I'm Dr. Brittne Halford.
And of course, we're here to help you build wealth and make good money decisions so you can create the life you desire with more control over your time.
Hey, Lisha, one of the most important financial tasks we do as doctors is protect ourselves, which means getting the right insurance. I recall purchasing my insurance policy just a few days before I graduated from residency. What was your experience?
So I got my insurance when I graduated from medical school right before I started residency. I actually called a few agents, but I had the best service from Pradeep Auto at PKA Insurance Group. He was super responsive and personable. Unlike some of the other agents, Pradeep actually got me quotes from all the major companies and actually took the time to explain the nuances in each of their policies. What I love most is that he wasn't just this way for me. Whenever I would send one of my friends to him, he would not only speak to them, but he'd also let them know where to go or who to contact if there were better options or discounts available.
At PKA Insurance Group, Pradeep Auto and Matthew Peterson are independent brokers focusing on disability and life insurance. They excel in securing coverage for physicians and other medical professionals. Discounts on disability insurance can range from 10 to 40% depending on your situation. And there is now an A+ rated carrier offering up to $10 million of life insurance without lapse. If you are very healthy with limited to no medical issues, approval is likely in 5 minutes. Reach out to PKA Insurance to discuss your disability or life insurance needs at www.pkainsurance.com or call 1-800-258-1018. Hey, money best friend, we want to hear from you.
That's right. We need to know a little about you to improve this podcast and ensure we give you the best content possible.
Are you a wealth-minded doctor like us navigating the challenges of money and medicine, or are you in a totally different field?
Are you in your early 30s like me or a bit older like Brittne?
Hey, I'm not that old. If you wouldn't mind, head over to the podcast show notes, click the link for the survey, and kindly fill out this super short 6-question survey.
Based on your answers, we will tailor the podcast to fit your needs. Thanks in advance for filling it out, and don't forget to leave a review.
We appreciate you.
All right, Brittne, this is our Life is Lifing segment. Let me know what is going on over there for you in Boston.
Well, Lisha, we've had past episodes talking about the pros and cons of purchasing a home versus renting. And one of the things that we highlighted is that purchasing a home is not cheap. There are a lot of unexpected expenses. And I love our new home. I think it is a blessing from God. But just before we hopped on this session, I was meeting with one of the people in our community who does all of our repairs, and our hot water heater is leaking. So I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm in the bathroom Googling how much this hot water heater costs, and it's like $3,000. Thankfully, we have an emergency fund, but it's not something that I anticipated that we would spend as we just, are getting settled into our home.
Man, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And that is actually one of my fears when it comes to home ownership. I hear so many stories about people who say that within the first 6 months or within the first year buying a home, there are all of these unanticipated costs. And, if it's a few $100s, not that that's nothing, but that doesn't freak me out. It is I need to replace a roof and that's 15 grand. Or, in your case, I need to replace the hot water heater or the air conditioner or whatever. And it's thousands of dollars. And to me, I'm like, okay, these are the times when I'm glad I'm renting.
Yes, I hear you. During our first home purchase, because we were actually living in the home for 3 years before we purchased that condo, we knew the ins and outs of what was broken and what we needed to fix. And with this home purchase, we did an inspection, but we did the inspection in February because of just kind of the timing in which our realtor found the home, and we didn't close on the home until June because of other circumstances, like making sure that we were in our old property for at least 2 years so that we could get the homestead tax exemption, and making sure that the tenants who were in our new home were actually out. So there are a couple of circumstances that led to this delayed closing date and this separation of time from the actual inspection until we actually purchased the home. And I wouldn't have detected that the hot water heater was leaking, but I think the home inspector would have if we had done it closer to the closing date.
Wow. Okay, man. So that's another thing is like you did the right steps on your part, right? It's not like you skipped the inspection or bought the house unseen. You did the inspection. You just did it really early. And it's like, man, these things kind of went awry in the
Hmm.
interim. The other thing is that you sort of dropped a nugget on us. And I don't know if the people caught it, but I'm going to catch it for them is that you really wanted to get the homestead exemption. And to get that exemption, you need to be in the home for 2 years. Can you enlighten our audience about what that is and why that's so important?
Yeah. So, whenever you're thinking about selling a home, ideally you will sell it for more than what you paid for it. And anytime you have a gain on the sale of a property, then you will have to pay capital gains tax. So, the homestead tax exemption allows for both, because my husband and I are both on the deed, will allow for us to have a $250,000 tax exemption from any of the capital gains. So, say for example, just to make numbers simple, we buy the home for $500,000. If we sell the home for $1 million, then we will not have to pay any capital gains tax on that $500,000 difference because my husband would get 250,000 and I would get 250,000. But you have to sell the home within a period of time after occupying that home as your primary residence. So because we purchased the home in 2022, I wanted to guarantee that we had been in that home for 2 years as our primary residency before we moved out so that we could still qualify for the homestead tax exemption. Now, say we don't sell this home until what, 30 years down the road, and we hadn't lived in it for a period of time before that sale, we would not be eligible for that homestead tax exemption.
Okay, man, it's like you're thinking so far ahead. And for some people, that would not cross their mind. They're maybe in a home and then they realize they need more space or want to move for whatever reason. And then they move. But you're like so tax savvy, Brittany, that you're like, hold on a second. We need to live in the home technically for 2 years as our primary residence in order to not have to pay taxes on any capital gains when we sell the home, AKA not have to pay taxes on the profit that we make when we sell
Mhm.
the home. So I'm applauding you right now for keeping that in the back of your mind. I don't know if this is your awesome tax advisor, Alexis, whom we had on the show, or if that's you doing your own due diligence. But either way, kudos to the both of y'all for all the money and taxes you're going to save.
Thanks, Lisha. I appreciate it. There's so much thought that goes into managing money well. And for someone who is not aware of these benefits, like it just doesn't register for us. But I really think that money is a game. And so that's why this podcast is so important. That's why financial literacy is so important because one of the ways that you boost your income, boost your well being is making sure that you retain more of your money. And how you can do that is by really thinking strategically about not only generating income, but how to save on taxes as well.
I love it. I love it.
So, what's going on in your world? How is life over there in Atlanta, hot Atlanta?
Oh my gosh. Well, I don't know because I haven't been here. I've been traveling so much lately. And, I'm trying to find this balance, Brittany, between travel and rest because both are really valuable to me. If you ask me, I'm the kind of person where I would rather like fit in really incredible experiences and be a little tired than like not have those experiences at
Mm,
all. And the problem, I think, with that mindset is that sometimes I overextend myself
mm.
and then I end up with not enough rest. And I think that's what's happening now is I've literally been out of town like every week and I've committed to so many things, a lot of them really awesome things, like me trying to show up for friends and family. But oh my goodness, I'm so tired. I love to travel, but still trying to build in room for rest and trying to like strike that right balance if there is one.
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of us probably fall into that, yeah, because there's so much to do. And I have also felt the burden of not having enough rest. And I have been thinking of how can I simplify? How can I scale back my life? What are the things that I don't have to do? I love that you're doing all the things that you want to do. So that's great. And maybe it's just like you just need to rest and wait for the next time. But I think for many of us, we've created these lives that are so busy and we forget to prioritize self care. And sometimes self care is just like sleeping enough, drinking enough water, eating. It's like the simple things of life that we don't actually prioritize.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm trying to do a better job with that. And so wish me luck on my endeavor.
I'm sure you're going to be good until the next time somebody invites you on a trip and you're like, I'm invited because I'm the life of the party and I got to be there.
That's already happened. I was going to save it for our ending segment, but yeah, that's already happening. Anywho, let's get into our financial focus for this week. All right, Brittany. So in our opener, we talked about, would you like to be able to make work optional? Or would you like to be financially independent? And so I'm really excited to kind of dive into this topic today.
Yeah, me too. I think about making work optional. And at least right now, where I am and our finances, I'm so grateful for where we are. But I know that work is not optional. Many of us might feel that way. When I think about even my parents, well, my mom didn't work all the way to 65, but my dad is still on the grind. And I don't want to work as hard as he is working at his age. However, we don't have really great examples, at least in my family, of what it looks like to be financially independent and to retire early. So I'm really happy to get your perspective on this too, and how your parents are your parents retired?
Well, my mom is, my dad is not.
Okay. So would love to hear more about like how your mom is navigating this and then how you see yourself. Also, do you want to retire early? What do you think? Are you going to be one of these positions on fire?
Yeah, yeah. So for those who weren't aware, Physician on Fire, FIRE stands for Financially Independent Retire Early. So it's this concept that you have enough money where you no longer have to work if you don't want to. In other words, work becomes optional because you are no longer dependent on work. You are no longer dependent on a job in order to fund your lifestyle. In other words, you could continue living and doing the things that you normally do, buying the things that you need to buy without running out of money. And that is such a freeing feeling. It sounds like you have to have millions upon millions of dollars in order to be in that position. And we'll kind of dive into this episode about maybe why that may not be the case for some people. But to answer your question, Brittany, yeah, my mom is retired. She was a school teacher
Mm.
for about 30 years. She did her 30 years and then she was like, I'm out of here. And so she was really excited to retire. But I will say this, a little moment of transparency. Although she was excited to retire, I do think that it took her a while to feel like she had purpose after she
Mm.
retired.
Mhm.
And I'm obviously putting words into my mom's mouth. I haven't asked her this specifically, but it seemed to me that she derived a lot of her purpose in life from two main things. One was her job as a teacher, and the other was raising us kids.
Mhm.
I have two older brothers, so there's three of us. And I think that those two things coincided at the same time. At the time that she retired was the time that I left the house, or I think maybe a couple years later, I had gone off to do, I can't remember the exact timeline, but it was around that same time where it was like, okay, the kids have all left, all three of us, and she had retired from teaching. And I think it took her a while to be like, wow, like, how am I spending my days? I'm no longer driving Lisha to like 20 different things in a day. I'm no longer preparing a lesson plan for my kids, or I'm no longer preparing my classroom. And I think it was like her trying to figure out how she's going to spend her time. And then she got really involved in our church, started joining gym classes. She's one of those people that actually does the exercise class at 11 a.m. I think now she's getting into her groove. And now that my brothers have kids, she's like in her grandma role
Mhm.
and loving it.
Mhm.
But there was this period in which she was sort of unsure, I think, of like where she stood and where her purpose was. My father, though, is still working and it is by choice. And it is not that he's like a multi-billionaire. Trust, I wouldn't be working if he was that. But for himself, I think that he has enough money at this point in his life to take care of himself and my mom. And so he could retire right now. He really likes his job and he loves the flexible schedule. And he said that he'll retire in a couple of years. But I think he's also kind of struggling with this of like, what would he do if he retired
Mhm.
and all of that. So I think there is this other side of the coin about if you decide to retire early, where would you derive your purpose? What would you do? How would you spend your time? But there is this other side of like, wow, how freeing it must be for work to be optional.
Yeah.
How amazing it must feel to know that you could quit this job at any time and still be able to live your life as you desire. And I want that choice. So I don't know what age in which I'll have that because I think that, me right now, not being married, not currently having children, my financial independence number, if you will, the amount of money that I would need is very different than if I got married and had children and had college tuition to pay for and daycare expenses to pay for and things like that. That might push back that timeline, but I would love to have that choice. And I'm sure that a lot of people would love to have that choice as well.
Yeah, Lisha, I think you've highlighted a lot of what I've heard about retiring early. And I've listened to a bunch of podcasts. I do know of people, but I don't know anyone within my close network who have retired completely because of fire and they're just like living their life. I haven't talked talk to them about their experience. But from listening to other podcasts about people, especially physicians who have achieved this goal, that sense of purpose that is connected to our identity of physicians and our careers in the day to day, just like your mom, is something that is a challenge for us to process. So, yes, we're all trying to achieve this financial independence and making work optional because of our identity. I think we will lose a sense of purpose for many of us until we find a renewed purpose. So, I'm really glad that your mother has been able to do that and that your father is kind of thinking about planning his retirement and finding a different purpose that is not attached to his career. Whenever I think about retiring early, it's something that I also desire. It seems a little far off. Especially as we just purchased this new home and where we are in Boston. And I calculate that number. Each of us has a number. And at some point, we will go through and kind of talk about what that number is and like how to calculate it. But when you think about that number, how much money you will need to have in order to basically live off of the returns of your investments, because you have allowed your money and allocated it appropriately, that now your money is doing the earning. It's not you physically exchanging your time and energy for an income. It's the income, the dividend income from your investments or income from your real estate properties. And when I think about that number, I'm like, okay, what is the strategy? What do I have to do in order to achieve this number? Because that number seems so daunting now, what do I have to change in my lifestyle so that I can have a lower number and get there faster? And another side of the FIRE movement is sometimes you might sacrifice a little bit of the guilty pleasures, traveling with your friends, overspending a little bit so that you can achieve this goal that might be 3, 5, 10 years down the road. And it's kind of balance of how much do I want to save today for the future and what does that savings equate to as far as a sacrifice of something that I want to experience today.
Yeah, I would agree with you. As we're thinking about making work optional, it's like, okay, I need to have money. And for a lot of people, it's like, I need a lot more than what I currently have. Okay, great. We have a starting point. And then I think the next question is, how much do I need to get there? And, we're thinking about, okay, how do you calculate it and all of these things? And I think one thing to really keep in mind is how much do you need to live on each year?
Hmm.
And for some people, I think they make the assumption that what you need to live on each year is actually your salary. But I would remind people that it's different, right? Because we're not taking into account taxes. We're not taking into account the amount of money that you use for retirement accounts or saving or whatever. When you think about how much money do you spend each month, then I think that that number is a lot lower. And then obviously you multiply it by 12 to figure out how much money do you need each year. And we'll do maybe a whole podcast episode about how expenses change in retirement and about how to adequately calculate that number. But I think that's one thought is like, how much do I need to live on each year roughly? And then it's like, how in the world could I amass enough money to live on that amount, yearly until I die? Like, what? That must be a lot. And I think one of the things that becomes very apparent to a lot of people is one, that number is very large. And two, you're probably not going to be able to save your way to
Hmm.
it. Meaning just putting money in a savings account, just putting $1,000 a month in an emergency fund is probably not going to get you there. And so it's like, okay, well, what do I do? Do I have to do real estate? Do I have to like bet on Nvidia or cryptocurrency? Like, how in the world do people get there, right? Do I have to like change my job and like work 80 hours a week? Like, what? How is this possible? And I think there is a little bit of like increasing your income, but it's really understanding that, okay, if I can't save my way to wealth, if I can't save my way to fire, then maybe I need to invest my way to wealth and maybe I need to invest my way to fire. We talked in one of our other episodes about investing through work retirement accounts and how they give you tax advantages to doing so. And so, if you are investing consistently each year, maxing out or contributing the maximum to your work retirement account and to your backdoor Roth IRA, then over time, over the next 10 or 20 or 30 years, you may actually have that number that you need. But it's really realizing, okay, I can't save my way to that number. I can't save my way to financial independence and be able to retire early, but I can invest my way there. And so it's like, okay, I know I need to invest. How do I make sure I'm investing enough?
Hmm.
And that's, I think, where your point came in about in order to invest enough to be able to become financially independent, you have to invest a lot. And if you're investing a lot, you're not spending a lot. And that's when you're like, okay, so I'm not gonna take that trip. So I'm like not gonna put my kids in private school. So I'm like not gonna take that international vacation. So I'm like not gonna buy that car, not gonna buy that
Mhm.
swanky home I've always wanted. So then you start realizing, okay, if I want to be financially independent, I got to invest a lot, which means I have to sacrifice a lot and cut my expenses to a very large degree. And that I think is that disconnect for a lot of
Mm.
people. Some people are fine eating rice and beans and like cheap meals or whatever so they can retire at 40. Others of us are like, you know what? Retiring at 50 sounds fine. And I'd rather be able to take a vacation and like give my kids top notch education in order to do that. And so it's really figuring out how much do you want to sacrifice to make work optional? How much do you want to sacrifice in order to reach fire?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So many things. When I was working with one particular client, she stated that she wanted to have $1 million saved in the bank. And now she doesn't think that way. But that was like the initial thought. And I'm like, okay, interesting. And we did this exercise of knowing how much she needed in retire. She's like, oh my gosh, Brittany, I am never going to be able to retire. I think if you are feeling like that, I just want you to feel empowered that you will be able to retire. Because I also had another client in which we did projections. She knew she didn't want to work until 65. So we did a few projections of what will it look like if you were to retire at 51? How much would you have to save now? What would it look like if you were to retire at 55? And that was very freeing for her to kind of go through and to create the strategy and associate a numerical goal to each of them. Because I think for many of us, it can seem so overwhelming. Or perhaps you're like me and you don't have any great examples of what it looks like to retire early, retire well, so that you're not stressed about money, so that you can still enjoy your life, that you can be healthy and enjoy the comforts of whatever it is that you desire. So, this is definitely possible for all of us. And it highlights another thing that the biggest thing that you can do in order to achieve that goal to be financially independent and retire early is to be disciplined and to know what brings you joy. Because Lisha highlighted the sacrifices that might come on the other end of achieving that goal. And in this podcast, Lisha and I have talked about this before that maybe you can't spend on everything. Like my car is 19 years old, but there are other things that I really choose to spend my money on so that I can enjoy life today because I do believe that the presence is a gift and that is not guaranteed, right? Enjoy life today and still be able to achieve my goals in the future. But it requires that you have a set understanding of what that numerical amount is. You have the discipline to spend on what matters to you, and you have the knowledge to invest the difference because you can't save your way to that number.
Man, this is one of the things that I will do sometimes when I'm stressed out at my job. There's this website that I go to all the time. It's a compound interest
Mm.
calculator. I don't know if you're like this, Brittany, but it is me. That is me all day, every day. And sometimes when I'm stressed at my job, I'll start thinking about, man, one day work will be optional. One day I won't have to deal with this and this and this, right? Because, like you said, that number seems so large and so daunting that one of the things that I do is remind myself of the power of compound interest when you're
Mhm.
investing and how your money builds on itself. And so for me, it's very helpful when I'm stressed to look at that build and to see how high it gets, right? So one of the things I'll do is I'll like be like, okay, if I just contribute the maximum to my work retirement account, get my match at my job and do my backdoor Roth, I'll be investing, I don't know, $45,000 a year. I'm just throwing out a number, and that equates to around 4 grand a month, right? So I'll put that in the calculator and I'll be like, okay, if I invest 4 grand a month, index mutual funds for the next 20 years, okay, I'll get enough. I'll have enough. And so it just gives me that reassurance. It helps me realize that this is not something that I have to do forever. And then other things that I'll do. So I was teaching the residents about finance like a couple of weeks ago. I pulled out, my compound interest calculator and I said, if you just do one thing right, and that one thing is just contribute the maximum to your work retirement account, you'll set yourself up to be a millionaire. You'll be great. You'll be golden. And they looked at the numbers, they saw the calculations, and they said, Lisha, this sounds amazing. Like, what? I'm going to have $4 million or $6 million or whatever. And then I saw some like gloomy looks on some of their faces, right? So it's like some people were excited, some people were gloomy. And I was talking to one of them and I said, well, why do you look so sad? And she said, Dr. Taylor, this seems great, but I don't want to work for 30 years. She's like, I have to work for 30 years in order to get this amount. And I said, you know what? I had people like you in mind because I'm like you. I don't want to work as a physician for 30 years either. And And so I went to my next slide in the presentation and I said, and the top of it was, what if you don't want to work for 30 years? Right. And so I talked about how you just contribute the maximum to your work retirement accounts and get your match, and you do that for just 10 years and you just let that money sit for the next 20 years, it's still going to grow to a large amount. And that's when they all got excited because it was like a lot of them, and I think a lot of physicians, other physicians feel this way too. It's like, okay, they know they don't want to work as a physician full time for 30 years. Like that seems insane to them. And so they like the option to retire early, but it's not like they want to do nothing. For some of them, it's just like they want to do something else that maybe pays less or they want to work part time. And so this freeing feeling of let me just work full time for 10 years, contribute the maximum to work retirement accounts, get my match. And then as long as I just let that money sit, I'll be okay while I go do something else that brings me more joy. That to them gave them more
Mhm.
options. And so it's not full retiring early because they still plan to work in some capacity.
Mhm.
Maybe it's part time, maybe it's doing something entirely. It's not that they wanted to sit down and do nothing. They just didn't want to work full time in medicine for 30
Mhm.
years. And so I think knowing that that's an option for you as well is very freeing for a lot of people.
Definitely. So, just to highlight some key considerations that we've already talked about, if you are someone who's like, yeah, I want to make work optional, here's a few things that you need to do. The first is we have to get an understanding of what our debt is, create a debt strategy, and pay off that debt. We have lots of student loans, and sometimes that can also be daunting, but you may not want to pay off that debt while you're retiring, right? If you've worked all the numbers and you've built that into your plan, it might be possible if you invest the difference and the investment grows more and returns more than your debt. But ideally, all of your debts will be paid off at the point of you retiring early. And then we talked about making choices, avoiding lifestyle inflation. Oftentimes, when we increase our income, then we also increase our spending, but we challenge you to really be disciplined and to make wise choices. Then you have to create an investment strategy. So Lisha talk about investing in your 401k, doing your backdoor Roth IRA, having an idea of how much you need to invest every year in order to achieve that goal, and minimize your expenses. So expenses are not just your day-to-day, month-to-month expenses that you're spending money on to live, but expenses also include the expenses of that investment. So you want to invest in low cost index funds and really think about what are some of the other expenses, including some taxes and things of that nature, that you need to incorporate into this decision making. And then what Leisha really has highlighted here is the value of time. Don't wait until next year, 3 years, 5 years. You want to get started now because the longer you give your money to grow, the more it will grow. And so you want to make sure that you don't just let that money sit in a brick and mortar bank account. Like you get that money invested and investing again in low cost index funds.
I love that. I love that. Brittany, I have a question for you. I'm curious to see your thoughts on this. Some people are in the do what you want, do what makes you happy, do what brings you joy camp. And they say if you want to be financially independent and have the option to retire early, then it's your prerogative and you should be able to do that. Other people feel like it's wrong. They feel like as a physician, it's our duty to society. We have a skill set that other people don't have. We're saving lives. Isn't it wrong? Isn't it ethically immoral to say you're just going to use your job as a way to financial security and then quit once you get there? Like, don't you have a duty to your patients and things like that? You're laughing on the other end, but I'm telling you, some people really do think that way. They think that it's selfish for doctors to want to retire early or think that way. I'm curious to get your thoughts on it.
I think each person is different. And I definitely have some colleagues who are wholly committed to medicine, specifically academic medicine, which we know that academic medicine pays a lot less than private practice or working in a community. And they are just wholeheartedly committed to academic medicine. And that works for them. That brings them joy. That gives them life and career satisfaction. I have other colleagues who they take the job that is the highest pay because for them, they have another goal. It's a financial goal. And maybe in addition to medicine, they have other passions. But although they're seeking a certain income threshold, it does not mean that they're any less committed to their patient care or don't provide appropriate high value care to their patients. So I think that this is individual. And I just really say, like, do you? At some point for me, I realized I still love patients. I love being at the bedside. This week has been very challenging for me. I put like 3 patients on hospice, and I love doing that. I also know that if I am sick, if I die, then I am going to be replaced. And there's a certain point in my life, it was really after having children and also listening to, I say listen because, most of my reading is like children's books nowadays. I consume a lot of my education audibly. So I listen to the Audible Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he has one of these exercises where he wants you to envision your death. And like the people who are closest to you, what are they going to say about you? What are you going to miss? And I realized academic medicine was not something that I was going to miss. I wouldn't miss writing another journal article. I wouldn't miss publishing things. And so with me now, medicine is a career, something that I love to do and brings me a lot of joy and fulfillment, but it's not the only thing. And I'm not going to sacrifice the livelihood of my family, sacrifice my own well-being for this career. So I say that each person is different. Understand that this is a job. Yes, it would also be great if it's your lifelong passion, but we can also be multi-passionate and use this as a way to generate income. And I don't think that there should be any guilt associated with that.
I love it. I love that. I do feel like women in healthcare or women in medicine get a lot of flack for having that mind
Mm,
frame of like, it's okay for me to be passionate about other things besides this job.
mhm,
My desire to work part time, my desire to maybe on the other end of the spectrum, leave this job
mhm,
and make a lot more elsewhere doesn't make me selfish, doesn't make me not a team player, doesn't mean that I am any less devoted to my
mhm,
patients. Maybe you realize that as you grow and mature and things in your life change, that in order to show up as my best self, this is what I need. I'm handling multiple jobs or handling multiple things. And so, in order for me to be the best doctor that I can be, maybe I do need, 3 days off per week instead of the standard 2 days off on the weekends. Maybe I do need to work part time so that I can be more productive during the time that I'm here. And I do think that as women, sometimes, especially women, as we start having children, there tends to be a lot of backlash towards
mhm,
that. And then, for a lot of our male counterparts, there tends to be some backlash about only caring about the money, always choosing the highest job
mhm.
and working so much. And so I think that both genders, not to, create stereotypes here, but tend to get some pushback. But I love what you said, that it's okay to be passionate about multiple things and you can still love your job, but also realize that other things may be more important and that you can make a difference in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
So I love that.
I think that's burnout, as you kind of highlighted, that it can be one of the drivers for fire. I think on the other end of that, right, if you're thinking about saving so much so quickly so that you never have to work again, that can also lead to burnout. So I think it could be both the driver and a drawback of pursuing fire. So if you're someone who definitely wants to be financial independent and retiring early, and maybe that's driven because you're just burned out where you are and you're like, I'm done with this job. I would also charge you to think about what exactly it is about the job that is pushing you so hard to want to flee from the work that you're doing. And maybe it's just a change of environment. Maybe it's asking for a little bit more of academic time, or maybe it's asking for more administrative time or additional days off, or whatever the case may be, so that you can reinvigorate your passion and not be so propelled to like let it go or find something else. So it's really interesting when we talk about this goal of retirement and retiring early, because you can let me know about your parents, but I don't think my parents ever thought about, oh, I'm going to be financially independent and retire early. Like they were thinking, okay, I'm going to work until I'm 65. This is what everybody else has done. And this is what I got to do to get my pension. So things have definitely changed.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. And thank you for highlighting that some people pursue fire because they're burned out from their job. And then other people want fire so much that they burn themselves out in the process of trying to achieve it. It's like they know they need to save a lot. And so they save so much that they end up depriving
Hmm.
themselves of some of life's pleasures versus, there are other people who like never think about retirement and they're unprepared for that time. And so I think there is a balance there for it. But I think you and I can probably both agree that it's something that we at least both want. Like we want the option to be financially independent. I would love to have that option, hopefully in my 40s, but at least in my early 50s where work then becomes optional. I can cut down completely if I want. I can pivot to a different field if I desire. And so that's definitely something that I'm trying to prepare myself for. As physicians, one of the most important things that we can do is make sure that we secure our income because a lot of our financial plans are contingent on our high doctor income. One of the things that you will need to do is make sure that you get long-term disability insurance.
Now, Pradeep and his team at PKA Insurance Group have a reputation for putting people over profits and always doing what's best. Do not hesitate to email PKA Insurance and his team today.
They will help you get the insurance you need with the service you deserve.
All right, so now let's move on to our money mishaps and confessions. Lisha, do you have a money mishap this week?
I don't know if it's a mishap, but it's definitely a confession. And so I went to Northern Florida, went to Destin, which is not that far from my hometown and my parents' house, to celebrate my birthday. Invited some of my childhood friends. It was a blast. However, before I got to Destin, I stopped at my parents' house because it's near Destin. And I was like spending some time with my parents. I think we were going to go eat lunch. And I was riding with my parents because we were all going to go together. And I needed to get something out of my car. So I like do the little beepy thing, on my car key alarm, and it's not working. And I'm like, well, this isn't good. I can't unlock my car. Thankfully, I had the physical key too. So I used the physical key to unlock my car. But my takeaway was, okay, maybe my fob thing, I don't know what you call it, the alarm key automatic thing, maybe it's dead. Maybe it needs a new battery. And my dad's like, okay, I'll stop you by the car dealership and you can get a new battery in that thing. We do that. I get a new battery. I'm coming home. Come home, use the little fob thing, and it's still not unlocking my car. I mean, I have the physical key, but I'm like, well, I just replaced the battery. Like, what is happening here? My dad's like, Lisha, I don't know how to tell you this, but I think your car might be dead. Like not the key fob, but the car itself. And I'm like, what? And I try to crank up my car, Brittne. It's not cranking. It's not cranking. It's not cutting on. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So my dad's like, not a problem. I can jump you off. I'm like, I'm glad you're here because I don't know how to do that. He like, connecting the cables, the positive with the positive. You can tell I know nothing about cars, but he is connecting this and he's like, all right, try to crank it up. And it's not cranking. And we try it again. It's not cranking. And I'm calling for help. They're not helping. I'm like, are you serious? I'm gonna have to tow my car to the dealership. I'm saying all this to say that my money confession is car issues. I needed a new battery. I needed an oil change. Apparently, there's like 10 system updates that needed to happen. Like it was a whole thing. And thankfully, I was going to Destin with my friend. So my friend could just drive me to Destin while my car was getting worked on. So it worked out perfectly. But that definitely was not free. And I was just like, man, on my first hand, I was like, this is inconvenient, right? I'm inconvenienced and it's going to cost me money. But on the other hand, I was like, well, thankfully, this is an inconvenience and not a financial catastrophe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at the point in my life where paying $500 or $1,000 to get my car fixed is not something I enjoy doing, but something I certainly can do.
Yeah.
But I was like, things like this tend to happen to me each month where it's not car trouble, but it's some unexpected expense that, yes, I can pay for, but it's like, I don't want to raid my emergency fund for this. And so I think that my money confession is that I need to create a sinking fund. And I've heard of this before, like just, within my budget, having room for error, having room for some of these unexpected expenses so that they don't just derail my entire monthly budget. Because this car thing, inconvenient. And I was like, okay, that's like $500.
Yeah, I hear you there. I think a sinking fund is great and it provides a lot of relief, especially when, at least how I've seen this play out, is in the clients who are creating their debt strategy and trying to build that emergency fund so they no longer have to rely on credit cards in order to support them and carry them through that emergency. It is devastating when something small like this happens, where it's like $500, but they still don't have enough and they now have to take from their emergency fund that they're working so hard to build. So that's why I love sinking funds, because it provides an extra, like a soft landing within your bank account. And it still affords you to maintain that emergency savings that you need for like those really big emergencies, or to continue to contribute to that emergency savings because you've built in a little bit of cushion for your budget. Is it fixed? Is your car fixed yet? Or is it still
Yeah. Car's fine.
So I'm glad that's fixed and that your dad was able to support you and hopefully teach you a little something about how to give your car a boost just in case for the next time.
Girl, he still has a little ways to go. I know nothing. But anyway, I'm going to learn though. I'm committed to learning.
Yeah, I love that. I've had my battery die on me enough that I carry cables in my car now. So, my money confession is not using gift cards and losing a few of them. As you all know, we just moved to our new home. And so, there are some things that we found, and I'm like, oh, this had $20 on it, but it no longer exists. Or this store has now gone out of business, that this gift card is so old. And when you think about that, that's a missed opportunity. That $20, $30, $50, $100 is something some money that I could have used for something that I desired to offset an additional cost. And again, I'm always thinking about not only how can I generate more income, but how can I use the money that I have to the best of my ability? And so it makes me feel a bit wasteful and as if I did not steward well when there's just money sitting that I have not used.
I gotcha. I gotcha. I feel that way too. It's like gift cards are great because you're like, okay, I can like spend it at the store, but then I always find that I never spend the exact amount on a gift card. Either I don't spend enough and then I feel like, oh, I need to like spend more, or I spend more and then it's like, okay, I just spent money that I wouldn't have normally spent maybe. I think that's why the companies like love gift cards.
Mhm.
They're like, okay, you're going to buy a gift card for 50 bucks. The total is not going to be 50.
Yeah.
So either they're going to spend less than that and then the company basically keeps the excess, or they're going to spend more than that and then the company makes more money. And so I'm like,
Yeah.
trying to be like, "Okay, how can I navigate
Yeah.
this?"
Yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah. The psychology and the planning on the marketing business side is very thoughtful. And I think it also challenges us to think about how we're spending and like the psychology of how we're gifting, because in some regards giving cash is just probably the better option. Just let me just give you the value that I would give you in this gift card in cash so you can use it for what you want. All right, well, speaking of cash, let's move on to our fun money segment. Alicia, I know you've been doing so much traveling, so you probably have a lot to share about fun money.
Well, you're right. I just got invited on another trip, which we alluded to earlier in this episode. So I think before I mentioned that one of my close friends couldn't go with me to Europe. And that's what sparked this whole like solo trip. She was one of the people that was with me on my birthday when we went to Destin. But because Destin is so close to where we both grew up, it didn't feel like a trip for her or even for me. It just sort of felt like we were going to our hometown because it's so close to where we grew up. I'm saying this to say that she called me. She was like, "Girl, I have a makeup trip." And I'm like, "Where are we going?" And she's like, "Let's go to Miami." And I'm like, "We're from Florida. So Miami is like fun, but like we've all been there a million times." So I'm like, "Okay, Miami, I guess." And she was like, "For 4th of July," because we're recording this early. So 4th of July hasn't happened yet. But I was like, "Well, what would we do?" And she was like, "Well, we chill on South Beach. We go get drinks. But I've also been looking and I saw this yacht party, Lisha. Wouldn't that be fun?" She knows the words that trigger me to say yes. Brittany, at this point in my life, she just knows me so well. And the words yacht party have never been words that I've been able to decline. And so inevitably, I'm like, "This sounds good. You're trying to talk me into this." And I was like, "How much would the hotel be?" And all of this. And it's like, "I found this an Airbnb. It's so cheap. It would only be like a couple $100 each." And I'm like, "Wait, what? You found an Airbnb that's not a shack that we can stay in 4th of July weekend in Miami and we're doing a yacht party and this is going to cost me not that much money?" She's like, "Yeah, girl." And I'm like, "See, and now I can book the flight on points. It's starting to make sense. The math is mathing." And I'm like, okay, okay. So I basically am spending my money on a trip to Miami.
I have never been to Miami.
What?
I have never been to Miami. And because
Brittany.
I see so many like images of beautiful women, beautiful guys, and just like the beaches and the debauchery, I'm like, because I'm, so sage. At my, wise age of 38, do I want to go to Miami? So, Leisha, you have to tell me because I have never been there, but I just like, I'm like, I don't know if I can do Miami now, like with the partying and the drinks, like a yacht party. That sounds fantastic. But it's like, can I do a yacht party?
Brittany, you could totally do it. Yup. You're not old. 38 is not old. I know I tease you a lot, but like, come on. You're like still young. You can have fun
Yeah.
and you can tailor your fun. You don't have to like drink till 5 a.m. Like you're stay out till 6 a.m. in the morning. I'm at the stage where that's no longer fun for me either. Y'all go out there on a little vacation, get a babysitter, go to the beach, like, go do some shopping, go have fun. You deserve it.
All right, all right. We're gonna put that one on the list of things to do. So for fun money for me is that I've been buying so much, too much, because I'm trying to get this home in order. And although it's a beautiful home and it has a lot of things that are built out, there's just some customization where how our clothes were organized in our old home just don't work for this new home because of the closet structure and things of that nature. So I've been customizing and organizing and purchasing a lot of stuff. It may not sound very fun, but for me, like when there is organization, it frees my mind to do other things and be creative in other things. And because there's stuff everywhere, it just makes me feel overwhelmed. So it feels fun and freeing for me to be able to get some things in order.
Man, I need to bring you to my place. If you love to organize, Brittany, I got a lot of things that could use some of your organizational talents. So let me know.
I don't know if I love the act of organizing, but I definitely love the benefits that it provides in my life. life. Like I can find everything. I don't have to be stressed out looking for stuff and wasting time and feeling overwhelmed. So it's very important that I put the thought into creating structure of organization so that I can hopefully maintain it. It's a little bit hard to maintain it sometimes, but hopefully maintain it and just kind of keep that freedom going.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, keep us updated on how your home organization goes. And I will, of course, send you amazing photos from my yacht party in
Mhm.
Miami. Anyway, thank you all for joining us this week. Stay tuned for our next episode next week.
Hello, and thank you for listening to our podcast. And because of that, we have something for you, our Wealthy Mind Starter Kit.
Have you ever thought to yourself, I wish I could be better with money? Do you want to start investing and saving for retirement, but keep delaying because you don't know where to start? Our Wealthy Mind Starter Kit is here to help.
This guide will teach you what you didn't learn in your training so you can stop being confused about money and start taking what we call wealthy minded action.
We'll help you become a master of your finances and simplify investing so you can get started today. Take control of your financial future by downloading your free copy of the Wealthy Mind Starter Kit now and start building the wealth you deserve.
Hello, everybody. It's me, Brooke. I'm recording a little disclaimer for my mommy, Dr. Brittne Halford, and her friend, Dr. Lisha Taylor. Just so you know, they're not financial advisors, tax professionals, lawyers, or financial planners. Everything you hear is for education and entertainment. It's not strict financial advice, you know. So use your best judgment, chat with a tax professional, and all those other people that you need to talk to. Thanks for tuning in today. Keep cruising on your journey to wealth and wellness. Bye-bye.
One of the most important things you can do is ensure you have long-term disability insurance. Long-term disability insurance secures your income if the unexpected happens and you are unable to work due to medical illness, chronic conditions, or an accident.
Unfortunately, all insurance agents aren't created equal. Some of them are so focused on making a sale that they fail to reveal certain necessary information, tell you about discounts available, or clearly explain the process. Prati Botto and his team at PKA Insurance Group are different. They have a reputation of putting people over profits and always doing what's best.
If you need life insurance or disability insurance, reach out to Pradeep and his team today. They will help you get the insurance you need with the service you deserve.